I'm Dean Miller, President and CEO of PACT, and I'm here to kick off the second episode of the 2021 PHORUM Conference Series, presented by Fairmount Partners and AMETEK. Once again, I'd like to give a special shout out to all of our sponsors, many of whom you'll meet throughout the various segments of this series. In this next hour, we'll meet 3 more companies in our PHORUM demo pit, featuring our PHORUM committee's selection of top early-stage companies providing the cutting-edge innovation that enables digital disruption. And we'll hear from a lineup of speakers on the second of 4 variations on this year's PHORUM theme, the consumer as data producer and owner.
I'm Maria Villar from SAP. SAP is an enterprise software application company. We serve customers all over the world in all industries and all sizes. You probably know us best as an ERP software vendor, but we're so much more. 77% of all of the world's revenue transaction flows through an SAP system. And our solutions with artificial intelligence, machine learning, predictive analytics help our customers run more seamlessly, in a more automated way, and more intelligently. For the next hour, we will be talking and focusing on the customer and the consumer and their critical role in the enterprise data journey. You know, companies like Amazon and Facebook, Tencent, and Alibaba continue to build on their massive data and analytics that they have about their customers. But how are the paradigms shifting in terms of customer experience, data control, and data ownership? Our lineup of speakers will address this question and many more. We're very happy to be part of this event and to be able to kick off this next session.
Hi, I'm Peter Coffey. I'm Vice President for Strategic Research at Salesforce, but this is one of the times of the year that I get to take off the Salesforce hat and just be part of this amazing PACT community that has been doing PHORUM for all these years. This is our second year of doing it in a virtual format, and it's just really exciting to be able to continue the PHORUM record of bringing together a remarkable combination of points of view, the role of capital, the role of technology, the role of entrepreneurship, the communities that we create that make the future now. And it's just really exciting to be doing one of our great conversations about where this is all going. I am joined today by Tony Wimmer, who is the Managing Director and Head of Data and Analytics at JP Morgan Wholesale Payments. Tony comes to us with an unusual perspective. His education is at London School of Economics, University of Mannheim, but we're going to be talking about a subject that I know is really important to him. He wrote an article in Forbes last year called How Payments Can Enhance the Customer Experience and Spur Innovation. And that is not a back office way of thinking about this. And Tony's point of view on the role of data and the opportunity that data has to be unlocked and have its energy activated, to use the words we're using as one of our PHORUM themes this year, I think are really exciting. And I'm really happy to be able to bring Tony to you. Tony, thanks for being part of the PHORUM experience and community this year.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to this.
Tony, one of the things I know you really wanted to share is making sure that the organization mission, rather than the technology or the bells and whistles, are what's driving it. And the degree to which you want your organization to be thinking about helping your clients drive revenue. I mean, that's the heartbeat of operations. This last economic year was one in which people said, you know what? My P&L may say that I'm healthy, but solvency is having a pulse for the body, and moving payments around has been tremendously important in this time of stress. I think a lot of people have learned that their data was not what it needed to be to provide that real-time view of an unusual and unfolding situation. And I wonder what you can share about how you're trying to drive a new vision into your organization about what that represents.
Yeah, no, great question. So let me maybe talk a little bit about the role I have and how this is aligned to driving new innovation. So I'm head of data analytics for wholesale payments at JP Morgan. Wholesale payments is the combination of our payments businesses, right? So treasury services, merchant services, trade, and commercial card. And in those businesses, there's a tremendous amount of data, right? If you think about our treasury services business alone, we move $6 trillion a day. $6 trillion a day. We see 25%.
I'm trying to think of that in terms of dollars per second, Tony, and I don't really know if I can handle that math. Wow.
I know, right? And then we have merchant services where we process $1.3 trillion a year of consumer payments. And at JP Morgan, we also have a consumer bank. So we touch 50% of US households, and 20% of credit and debit card sales go through our card. So if you put all of this together, we're sitting on a tremendous data asset. However, historically, a lot of banks, but also a lot of corporates have been great at storing data and never using it, right? Because it's really hard. Yeah. Exactly, dark data. It's really, really hard. So what you actually need is, this is not 3 people and a laptop, right? This is, you need to make massive investments into infrastructure, into expertise of how you actually process big data. Yeah. Then you need subject matter experts in the data that can set the vision. What could I do with it? And then you need your software engineers, and you need your ML, machine learning and AI specialists. So this is a real investment. In our group, that's 150 people. So we have data scientists, ML, AI specialists, product owners, designers that work with clients to actually create experiences where this data can be used. And some of the best software engineers I've seen in the business. So, and the mission of the team, coming to your question, is how do I use all of this data to create data products and insights where our clients can make better decisions? Because that's what it's all about, right? If I don't focus on the client decisions, it's dark data and I'm storing it and it's a cost factor, and then at some point it gets deleted, but you gotta use it and you gotta heavily invest in it.
Tony, you're touching on 2 themes that I really enjoyed exploring with forum audiences in past years. Number one, if you don't visualize your systems for the scale you hope someday to achieve, you'll build systems that you have to rip and replace just at the moment that you don't want to be starting over from scratch, just at the moment your growth is taking off. Your comments about the role of scale in the operation, I think, are really important for people to have, looking over their horizon, saying, yes, but will this scale? I think that's on the list of the short questions that you can ask to sound smart in a meeting these days, is yes, but will it scale? But the other one is the degree to which what I'm hearing from you is you really are looking at this in terms of what does it do for the client, not what does it do for our operational efficiencies. You're not talking about cost reduction. You're not talking about IT metrics. You're really focused on what will our clients get out of this? Yeah. Why should they care, as opposed to just letting Moore's law build you a bigger, faster silo?
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. And that's also the reason. So organizationally, I don't sit in tech, I don't sit in data, I sit in the business, right? I sit in product, because we see data as the next generation of product. Right. And maybe let me share you a little bit the vision or the big directions of travel.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Where we think this is going. So, so 3 big themes that I'm working on, and everything I do is kind of focused on that. The first one is a little bit on liquidity, right? Liquidity is incredibly important for our clients, right? You got to have enough money in your account. So the vision here is, how do you use all of this data to get to what I call a self-driving treasury organization, right? Self-driving treasury organization. Why can't liquidity optimize itself, right? Like, why do you need humans making all of these decisions, moving money around? So that's the vision. Well, why can't payment instructions, when they break, why can't they heal themselves? So why can't this be all automated? That's one big theme. The second big theme is, and it goes to, we see 25% of US dollar flows across the world. We know a lot about accounts and who's behind the accounts. Why can't you make this a utility, the best global utility of account intelligence? Quick anecdote, we've just launched a service called Link Confirm. Link Confirm is a real life blockchain application, right? Institutions can sign up to link confirm. It's a peer-to-peer blockchain network to validate a payment. So who's behind that account solves real life problems. So that's what I mean by account intelligence, and there's a big theme there. And the third big theme is about how do we help our clients drive more revenue? Because at the end of the day, payments is a reflection of commerce, right, across the globe. And there's a lot of information in payments that, like, if you think about it, about who are my customers, who do my services resonate well with, why do we think they resonate well with certain segments and not others? Are we helping our clients just really grow their bottom line? So those would be the three big directions of travel that we are focusing on specific products.
Yeah, you're raising an interesting point, which IBM brought up years ago when they created the word autonomic. You don't automate systems because those do the same thing exactly the same way every time when they're working, as opposed to autonomic systems, which anticipate the possibility of noise and error and are designed to have a degree of self-healing and self-introspection. And that's what you're talking about, I think, is building systems with that kind of robustness so that they can feel their own pain, as it were, and do some degree of self-healing. And then the critical role of knowing that the cash is coming in the door, because selling doesn't make money. Selling creates receivables. Receivables have to be collected. And if you can't move the money and know when it's coming, because that's the other thing I know you're really working on with clients, is accurately anticipating what their cash flows will be so they can get things done. We talk about some of the things that you're bringing to your clients and some of the future that's now capability that you're creating for them.
Good point. The future that's now. So I'd like to share maybe three efforts where the future is already here, and like three efforts that tremendously helped a lot of clients unlock value. So the first one is, again, in the treasury services space, what you mentioned, cash flow forecasting. So that's actually one of the key parts of a treasury organization in a corporate, right? Making sure enough liquidity is in bank accounts. What you need to do is forecast inflows and outflows. Sounds trivial, right? But there are tremendous obstacles to make this an efficient and effective process. Number one is the data that's available to many corporates is just all over the place, right? Like, it has never really been organized or enriched to lend itself to good forecasting. Secondly is a lot of our clients still operate with systems that are very suboptimal. Like, a lot of forecasting is forecasting in name only. Like, yeah, sure, you can click on something and then something happens. But would you really trust it? Would you really make a decision on this? And a lot of clients say no. A lot of clients still operate with Excel, right? It's just reality, right?
The world runs on spreadsheets. The IT just records the results.
Correct. And then the third challenge is there is a ton of idiosyncrasy across clients, but also within clients. Clients have hundreds of bank accounts, and there's a lot of idiosyncrasy in those bank accounts. So one size fits all doesn't help. So what we've done, we've heavily invested in this area of cash flow forecasting, where we are created an application where our clients can, within our workflow tools, at the click of a button, create a forecast. So why is this important and special to us? Well, first of all, we let clients tap into our JP Morgan expertise of machine learning and AI. And again, it's not trivial, right? Again, this is not 3 people and a laptop. This requires a lot of investments. And JP Morgan, we make a lot of investments into this technology. So we're letting clients tap into that. And if you allow me to be geeking out a little bit for a second.
Please.
So I mentioned idiosyncrasy, right, of bank accounts. So one size doesn't fit all. This is not just one machine learning model. The way we've structured the problem, actually, it's 7 machine learning models, like, that compete against each other. It's called an ensemble approach, right? And then the machine picks the model that gets closest to what this account is actually intended for. So that's available, and it's currently in pilot for a lot of early adopter clients. We're hopefully launching this towards the end of this year to a broader audience, but we're super excited about where this is. And this was designed with our clients. So we worked very closely with our clients at every step of the way, which is where design thinking comes in, right? I gotta actually get into the mindset of how is a human gonna use these results? And often there is an interplay between human and machine that you just need to realize. Like if you ignore that, the human will not use the machine, because that's what we're focused on. So that's cash flow forecasting, which is one of our most exciting efforts. The second effort that I think has added a lot of value to our clients is our consumer insights program. So I go back to the beginning. We actually see 20% of US credit card flows, right, in the US. And we have, over the years, found a way to actually, in a very privacy compliant way, in a de-identified and aggregated way, derive insights that help our clients create insights into their own customer base, right? How far are clients, when they come to my store, traveling to the store? What type of segments are we really able to attract versus our peers? And we've worked with hundreds of merchants, consumer-facing merchants, to help them understand their own customer base better. It works tremendously well, especially when you're an e-com company. You never really see a client, right? You only see an email address most of the times.
Tony, it's so interesting to hear you talk about this notion of running multiple models and letting them compete against each other. That's such a different perspective from the old IT, which is there's one answer, there's one flow, here's the flow chart, here's the code. And you're talking about something that sounds like what Andy McAfee at MIT has talked about when people play freestyle chess. And the teams that win aren't necessarily those of the best chess players, but the ones that can have several different algorithms all working at once and see the opportunities when they disagree, as well as the opportunities when they agree, and really see data as alive. And that is so much the theme of what we wanted to talk about today, is moving away from dark data that's just a historical record of your transactions and sullenly just sits there defying you to learn anything from it. And building systems that can work at scale to see patterns, to see departures from pattern, and to really provide actionable information and not just historical record. It's such a fantastic vision, and you're delivering it at scale. And I know you're handling my credit card flows among those 20%. So
thanks for being a valued customer.
This is not kids with laptops claiming that they've revolutionized fintech. This is the real stuff.
No, look, thanks for saying that. And look, the UX, right, is easy, right? Like the UX, to create something beautiful, you can do it in a couple of weeks, right? But the plumbing and like the middleware and the knowing, okay, how do you need to like combine the data systems to create the signals and make them available at scale, that's really sometimes the challenge. But the cool thing is, that's why I love what I do at JP Morgan, right? We have so much resources that we thrown at that, and so much expertise across the firm that, and so much access to clients who really are excited about working with us, right? I spend most of my time actually with clients, like talking to them, what's working, what isn't working, let them test drive the pilot version, launch a new version every 2 weeks, right? That's really where I think we made tremendous progress in the financial services industry, because that's how great software is being built.
Tony, when you talk about a 2-week cycle, that's got to be a cadence of innovation that is not familiar to people who've been doing this for 10 or 20 years in your industry. I mean, that's an extraordinarily accelerated pace, isn't it?
I fully agree. Look, historically, everything was waterfall, right? And we know the challenges of waterfall, right? Like you write a business requirements document, 100 pages, right? And then you lump it over the fence, and then hopefully 18 months from now, something works, and it never really, works. And now it's like, look, work with the clients, let the client test drive it, release a new version every 2 weeks, and be okay that the first product out there isn't perfect, right? But if you don't do that, you're never going to get to the vision, right? So that's exciting.
This
it's
is
also
one of those
scary
cases
sometimes.
where, the tripod's got 3 legs, and if any one of them isn't there, it doesn't stand up, because the system has to be automated so that it delivers, consistency and scale. It's got to be selected from a large portfolio of various approaches and integrated in a way that, that certainly doesn't impede value. It ideally adds value. But finally, to your point, the system has to generate information that changes behavior and not just be a system of record, because otherwise people will go make their decisions in their spreadsheets and just tell the system of record later what they did. If you want to have that metadata being captured that lets the system, learn and improve in any way, you have to have the decision-making happening in that system, or else there's nothing from which it can learn.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And look, it's a journey, right?
Yeah.
You can't flip a switch and say we're agile. You can't flip a switch and say,
Burn it.
It's real human work as well, right? It's real organizational transformation you need to drive. But for me, it starts with a vision, right? If you can rally people around where you want to go, like a self-driving treasury organization, like helping clients grow their business with commerce, or account intelligence, like I mentioned, the link confirm. Like if you rally around the what, the how will fall into place if you just work hard enough on it.
If you work hard enough. Tony, we could do this for an hour, but that's not the plan. And I don't want to impose any further on your time. I'm so appreciative that you were able to bring this perspective of reality and scale in something that many of us rely on every day to this Future Is Now conversation about unlocking the value and activating the energy of data. One of our major forum themes for 2021. I'm Peter Coffey with Salesforce. I've been joined by Tony Wimmer with JP Morgan Wholesale Payments. And we are very glad to have been part of your forum experience for 2021. Tony, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Peter.
Hello, I'm Mike McEwen, Senior Director of Enterprise Sales at Comcast Business. Comcast Business is proud to be a longtime partner of PACT and PHORUM. We are committed to teaming with PACT, its members, and all enterprises navigating through today's unique digital environment. Our advanced connectivity solutions can help your enterprise fuel innovation, improve efficiencies, and create memorable interactions with your customers in this rapidly evolving digital marketplace. In this next segment, our panelists will further explore the shifting paradigm of data control and ownership, and how, along with that shift, new business models are emerging that enable consumers to take control of their own data, of who it is shared with, and even begin to monetize it, creating a new dynamic for the data economy.
Welcome to our panel on the consumer as the data producer and owner. And as you can guess by the title, we're going to dig into how we might flip the paradigm that has really been data and data ownership being the purview of large companies and organizations. How do we flip that around so that the consumer can take more control and drive some of the value that gets created from their own data? As we see these platforms more and more really deriving rent or economic value from consumer data. Some of the largest platforms in the world, like Amazon and Facebook and Alibaba and Tencent, are great examples of that. But they're also coming under attack, and there's a lot of tension in the marketplace as people realize that their data is being used in many ways sometimes they don't have all the answers for. And I think also individuals, but also governments have awoken to this fact, and you've seen a massive sea change in privacy laws that are trying to address some of those disparities, whether it's GDPR or CCPA or even SHIELD in New York. And finally, really there are models, and we have some of those represented on this call and panel, that are starting to emerge that allow consumers to get educated and even understand how they might participate in the broader data economy. So really excited for the mix of panelists we have here. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but the companies we have represented really span some of the larger, more established companies, some that have been around that you know well as consumers like eBay, some that you might not know as much about like Ciox, but has historically been a data platform in the healthcare space, and others that are going to be fairly new to you, DigiMe and Ocean Protocol, which are very exciting, ventures that are really changing the paradigm around data and the data economy. So with that, I'm going to ask each panelist, and I'm going to start with Anna, to just spend 1 minute, introduce yourself, say a little bit about your company. Some are more well-known than others, and then really talk about what your company does in the way of how consumer data is vital to your business.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the invite. So my name is Anna Zeiter. I'm Associate General Counsel and Chief Privacy Officer of eBay Inc. And probably you all know eBay, the international marketplace. We actually use data, of course, to facilitate all the global transactions that we have. But also on top of that, of course, to do know your customer, anti-money laundering checks, to improve the user experience, for example. Also, sometimes, we display advertising on our website, but I have to say data is not our core business. So we don't sell data, for example. So what we do is our core business is still the take rate, the commission fee, but of course we use a lot of data to improve the user experience, to see what are users interested in, how can we improve the website. But the question of value of information is crucial to us, and I think we come to that later today.
Thanks, Anna. Julian?
Hi, everyone. I'm Julian Ranger, the Exec President and founder of DigiMe. We enable individuals to get a full copy of all of their own personal data, which encompasses the complete spectrum from health, wearables, finance, social media viewing, listening, purchases, and more. So a large amount. And individuals end up holding that in their own decentralized encrypted library, and we don't see, touch, or hold that data ever. And then services, businesses, can request access to elements of that data via a consent system that we have, which includes a consent certificate that meets the bar for this GDPR legislation that Scott talked about for explicit informed consent. So if an individual agrees the value exchange, and we'll talk about that in a while, and gives consent, their DigiMe passes the requested data to the Apple service. So essentially what we're doing is democratizing data. Any business can get any data about an individual simply by asking in the individual, if they have a suitable value proposition to which the individual consents. And that's us.
Sounds like a brave new world. Can't wait to hear more about it. And Deborah.
I'm Deborah Hsieh. I'm the Chief Policy and Strategy Officer at Ciox Health. So our clinical data platform, we believe it empowers greater health by unlocking the potential of health data. So we only operate in the US, but we have the most extensive clinical data network here in the US. And we simply and securely connect healthcare decision makers with the data and insights in patient medical records. So really patients are at the heart of all we do, and we are trying to make better informed decisions possible in the US healthcare ecosystem.
Great. Thanks so much, Deborah. And do we have Bruce?
Hi, my name is Bruce. I'm one of the founders of Ocean Protocol. Ocean Protocol is aiming to help power a new data economy where people can share their data securely, but also being able to monetize it under the conditions that they set. We are built using blockchain technology, which is quite revolutionary. And the key advantage there is that there's no central kind of intermediary that can act as a monopoly on the data. And so if we do this right, it allows for anybody to join in, to share their data securely, but also to make accessible to people who need to use the data, like data scientists, the data that they need for advancing research in various sectors.
Sounds like a great opportunity to multiply participation in this data economy. Thanks for sharing that, Bruce. So I'm gonna start with a question geared at Anna and Julian. And I guess the first question I have is, do you think the value in data and the ownership model is out of balance today? And Anna, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so good question. So I think the data ownership model is a bit outdated, because data ownership means actually full control and the exercise of rights. So I would say full control in this current ecosystem is quite unrealistic, because we know that data sets can be reproduced within a millisecond. But I think what we see in the market over the last couple of years, that user rights are getting more and more important. So for example, GDPR introduced a bunch of new user rights. So data access rights, right to be forgotten, right to data deletion, right to data correction, for example. And we see that the new US state privacy laws that are popping up right now have similar laws. So what I see is that this full control idea, it's probably a bit outdated and it's not realistic. But I think it's important that the focus is on the new user rights. And this is what we see currently around the globe.
Great. Julian?
And I'll say probably similar things, but in a slightly different way, because it's definitely out of balance today, but it's for two reasons. And we often think it's one. And we often think it's one because of privacy issues, the lack of me giving direct consent to use my data. But it's also because data is stuck in stovepipes and unable to be reused, least of all by myself. So we know ownership of digital assets is an issue because it's not like owning a car. There's only one car, there can be multiple copies of data. So we should think of owning a copy, and simultaneously, what rights does the copy owner have? And so if we look at the problem, we've got this privacy legislation that redresses the balance between the business and the individual. You can only have my data if I give explicit and informed consent, for example. And that's taking time to be fully applied, but we're getting there. But I also have a right for a full copy of my data back. I can get a copy. And then that leads to the key point that will redress this balance and the whole start of a new ethical and trustworthy personal data economy. Because I'm the only person that actually knows where all my data is, which banks I use, which hospitals, which social networks I use. I now have a digital right for a copy of the data. I've always had a right. But importantly, I'm the only one with unlimited usage rights. I can choose to, I often say I print off my health data, put it on the windows of my car and drive it around. No one else can. And therefore, I must become the integration point for all my data because I'm the actually only place that can be done. And then anybody who wants access to my data, life is very simple. They just come to me. And because I've got the best, the richest data available, and it's easy to ask me. And so we're going to redress the balance because it just makes sense for it to be at the individual. And the legislation has driven us that way.
Great. And we're going to be anxious to hear more about how you do that. But it sounds like our data lives in many places, but today we don't really have equity in that data in many ways. So part of this is retaking that equity. So Bruce, I want to come back to you and hear more about Ocean Protocol and how you're changing the approach to data ecosystems. Tell us more about that. Oh, you're on mute, Bruce.
Yep, apologies. So, sure, happy to. So the premise of Ocean Protocol is that data is a new asset class, comparable to any other major asset class in the world, whether it's land, stocks, bonds, etc. And what we were looking for is some sort of native digital infrastructure that represents those digital assets so that, the previous panelists, what they were talking about is that, you can have multiple copies, but how do you have the rights associated? So we use this blockchain technology, which is pretty revolutionary and gaining adoption very quickly. But it's the key thing is it's native technology to handle digital assets. The software and the network give both data owners and the data consumers a new way to share the data without giving up control. And the best part is, of course, the code is open source, the network is open source, so everyone can participate, and there will never be any central monopoly power that controls the data again. And as Julian said, each kind of data owner has sovereignty over their data. And then what we do is we layer on top of that a way that people can monetize their data by sharing it if they want to.
Yeah, I guess sovereignty and traceability, right? because of the way your platform's set up. So very exciting. And I think we have some really interesting models represented. Let me go maybe to a model that's existed for a long time. And Deborah, tell us where you think healthcare is in this journey to flipping the paradigm on data ownership and control to patients and consumers. Where's the industry as a whole?
Sure, it's probably unsurprising healthcare is a laggard, and probably US healthcare is even the worst laggard amongst all types of healthcare. Just even hearing Julian describe the stovepipes of data in the US healthcare system, there's a million stovepipes just in healthcare, not to mention all types of other data. In fact, technically, many state laws indicate that providers legally own the healthcare data. So even though I agree that in the US, regulation and legislation is also putting forward that the individual should control the health data, some actually state laws don't yet state that, right? So there's a lot of education that's needed to help move healthcare providers out of that mindset of feeling like they're fully responsible for the security and usage of patient data. I think it's slowly happening, which is great, but there's just so much education that's required, as well as, frankly, in the US, there isn't as much protection for healthcare data or even the availability of privacy rights outside of covered entities, right? So actually right now, patients don't have a choice necessarily for healthcare data protection. So I think there's slow progress, but it is certainly still changing slowly. I think what Bruce is doing is great. I believe there's a lot of promise here in tokenization, and that's just something that's starting in healthcare data. I think there's been historically a lot of concern around de-identification and re-identification, which I think is solvable, right? So a lot of promise, but unfortunately, U.S. healthcare is not the best representative here.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point because there's not an insignificant cost to the liability of holding the data, especially in healthcare where you have HIPAA and PHI type regulations and penalties. What are some of the other challenges you see of consumers not only taking control, but actually monetizing their data, whether it's their genetic profile, their health profile into clinical research or any other study?
Sure. And for me, really right now, the challenge is trust in the US at least. Just as I mentioned, there just aren't standards today, right? For outside of health of covered entities, what does it mean for patient to have the ability, to have protections for improper uses of data? So, for example, Rock Health just did a study in 2020 after the pandemic started around, who do you trust as a patient? Over 8,000 people, who do you trust to share your health data with? And digital health was around 25% of folks, versus it was like 75% for a healthcare provider, right? And then pure tech companies were even lower, less than 15% of folks. So you just see that there's just such a, and I'm just using that as an example of a commercial entity. Everyone else above that was like a non-commercial entity. But to you, that just shows, at least in the US, there needs to be much more even a conversation around, why you should feel safe, either trying to monetize your data or sharing your data with others.
Julian, how do you see it? Is it the lack of a true PHR, which has always been this kind of mythical quest in healthcare, that a patient actually controls their own record, or is it something else that are some of the bigger challenges?
There are other challenges, but I mean, just on health itself, when you own it yourself, of course, a lot of those HIPAA problems go away if it's decentralized and you're done. So we're fully qualified for healthcare in the UK, Iceland, Holland, and in fact in the US with the Meaningful Use 3 legislation. So when you bring all that together, it makes it a lot easier. And of course you can share it and it can be processed on device. But as Deborah points out, it's going to take time, right? And we're there, it started. But some countries are pushing faster. So in fact, the Dutch are incentivizing companies to get the data to the individual and go from there. But when you talked about monetize, and I really want to qualify that word monetize, because individuals share their data and always have, but for value. And value is not always, and indeed rarely is it money. So we define value as a service, a convenience, or reward. So sticking to health, if a diabetes app asks me for my wearables data, my medications, my food purchases, I'm probably going to say yes to sharing the data, and I will pay for the app, because the value that I'm getting is keeping me healthy and alive. And that's worth more than anything else, right? And so we have to think of value in this broader context. So the challenge is on the businesses developing the service value propositions. So you've got to make that value clear to me for me to then want to share the data. But at the end of the day, actually, that's what businesses have always had to do. They've had to explain the value proposition for us to part with our money. Now they just need to explain it for us to part with our money and or our data, right? So I do think businesses are up to the challenge, but you've got to understand that it's wider than just monetizing.
Yeah, and I think your point on intrinsic value is enormous, right? Especially in healthcare. And I think back to Deborah's point, it probably comes back to trust, right? Like, do I trust you're going to give me back the benefit if I share my data, if it's not monetary? So I think both great points. So Anna, I'm going to come back to you. In the spirit of Goliath's revenge and this notion of Davids and Goliaths not necessarily fighting each other, but actually working together. How can incumbents and disruptors, like Julian and Bruce's companies, work to drive this new data economy and drive value back to consumers for their data?
Good question. I think it's coming back to trust again. So if we, for example, as eBay are sharing data, I mean, we are sharing data with multiple companies, as I said, with KYC and AML service providers, with bigger companies, with smaller companies. And it's always a balance of risk and benefit or risk and value. So what are getting we out of this data sharing? For example, if we share data with a KYC AML provider, of course, we are outsourcing something that we cannot do on our own. On top of that, we are giving the user an additional benefit or value because they know this is a trustworthy marketplace. But we always have to consider whenever we are giving away data, and this is a core asset, there's also risk involved because it could happen that theoretically, and not only theoretically, but also practically, that one of the data importers might become another competitor in the future. So we always have to consider what's this competitor, what's their interests, for what kind of purposes do they want to process the information, for KYC, AML purposes, or for any other purposes on top. How can we structure the data sharing deal? How can we structure the contract? How can we make sure that they don't use the data for any additional purposes to create a new business case? And especially the smaller companies, of course, they're aggressive. They want to have a stake of our marketplace. So we have to be very smart about it. And I think it always comes back to, we need to know what the value of our data is. We need to know the business interest and the purpose of the data sharing deal on the side of the data importer. And then at the end, we always decide, is that for us and for our users a good deal or not? And if we feel there's more benefit than risk, and we can mitigate the risk by contractual measures, by additional audits, for example, then we decide to do the data sharing. If not, then we say, no, we don't share the data at all.
So it's not a simple transaction. You really do need to think about the data journey, the data value chain, where it's going to end up. Bruce, any other thoughts on how big players and disruptors like you can work together? Sounds like your model.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. So the interesting thing is that our technology is built with the requirements that Anna spoke about, allowing data to be shared, but only used under the conditions that are defined, right? There are a lot of companies that are looking to unlock data and find ways to monetize it. There's a lot of people who are just learning, or they viscerally understand that the data is valuable, but they're going through that paradigm shift internally in their organization to try to squeeze some value out of it. The heartening thing that I've seen is that many of these companies are respecting consumer data and the privacy, and are seeking ways to evolve that value proposition so that the consumer knows that their data is going to be used properly and for the conditions that add them, of course, that type of value. And what I'm seeing is that as these companies move forward in this, redefining this value proposition, knowing that the data is their custodian, let's just say, to the data, and looking for value propositions, there's this huge ecosystem of developers around the world that are forming around new models using blockchain, for instance, that are unlocking piece by piece, building up component by component to make it possible so that when the enterprises are ready, there will be the technology available to allow them to scale up this new economic model very, very quickly. And so we're pretty excited about that.
It's almost the optionality of your data could be unlocked by exposing it to more innovators if you can do it responsibly and in a way that's transparent. So pretty exciting stuff. So we have a few minutes left, and I want to ask you each a question. If you have a crystal ball sitting in front of you, and you could ask it one question about the future of consumer data, what would you ask it? So I'm going to start with Deborah. You get one question.
Sure. It really comes down to what Julian mentioned, what's the value created that's so compelling that will make the individual want to have, be the nexus for their health data, for what data, and then also then share out. Yep. So, what's that value?
Great. Julian?
Yeah, so I would say sitting here at the beginnings of it, we're past the beginnings, but I want to know how quickly will it become commonplace? How quickly will this conversation seem as though it was an ancient one? Because we already know the answer. So
we've already moved on and the world's democratized. Anna?
When will we see the magic equation on how valuable our data? So I would love to see at one point in the future, like here is a algorithm where you can put in parameters and factors of your data, how structured it is, how current, how timely, how big is the data set. Then you can add what kind of computing power you have and what business area working, and you click a button, and then I would love to see a value of our data.
That would be great. And I know a few of us are involved in a World Economic Forum working group focused on that issue. Bruce?
The question I would have in the future, let's say in 30 years, is data considered a major asset class in its own right, like stocks, like bonds, like gold? And if it is, and there's a number associated with it, then I think we've all done our job.
Yeah, and my question probably in line with the rest of yours is, will consumers have the awareness to understand how to unlock the value of their own data? And I think we're getting there through platforms like yours, but that's really, how fast can that happen? Anyway, this has been terrific. Can't thank you enough for your time and sharing your knowledge and insights with our audience, and look forward to kind of changing the paradigm in data ownership. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Dan Koval, Corporate Initiatives Manager at Bentley Systems. Over the past 9 years, the PHORUM Demo Pit has featured close to 100 early-stage companies, allowing these startups to connect with C-level enterprise decision makers attending the PHORUM conference. Past Demo Pit winners have gone on to raise more than $65 million in capital, and 1/3 of the honorees have successfully completed exits to strategic acquirers. We've already heard from 3 Demo Pit companies in our first session, and we'll meet 3 more today. Our judges will review the pitches and announce the best in show at the final session of the PHORUM conference on April 22nd. But before we get to today's Demo Pit companies, let's catch up with Slice, our 2018 Demo Pit winner.
This is a great platform to be able to get out the word about what you're doing and promote it, and PACT and PHORUM do a great job of helping you get visibility, but it's also just as important that you get the word out yourself. So make sure to amplify whatever's coming out of this event and share it with your networks, because I think you'll find, like we did, that whether people actually attend the event in person or see it on LinkedIn, there will be a lot of buzz that gets created, win, lose, or draw, right? It's important just to amplify the message and share it through your own channels.
Vice President of Systems Engineering here at Pliant.io. And today I'm here to talk to you a little bit about how Pliant is innovating in the area of IT infrastructure automation. Pliant is focused on the underpinnings or the infrastructure that allow people to go from their laptops to whatever digital application they're using. There's a lot of ideas that will be presented this week at PHORUM 21 Forum 2021. And infrastructure underpins all of that. These are things like the wireless that you attach to, routers, switches, firewalls that secure your data. And Pliant has been working on a solution to actually automate the configuration and deployment of all that infrastructure. Started out a long time ago, we used bodies to do this. So we had complex infrastructure, we added some people. Infrastructures have grown, especially over the last year with the changes in our world. And so it was no longer possible to actually just add people to the solution. Along came code writing. But at Pliant, when we did a study, we found that engineers can only write about 150 to 200 lines of good code a day. That's fully debugged code, but it's not a lot. So now we need a lot of developers to help us with this automation. Or there's the idea behind Pliant. The idea is that we're taking 70 plus vendors worth of data in these action blocks, code already built, and we drag and drop them on the screen. What that looks like is this. On the left, I'm typing code into a file. I have to pay attention to syntax. I have to get everything just right. I have to save, compile, and test. And on the right, we have Pliant. Pliant is the drag and drop solution. As I mentioned, over 70 vendors, and we're adding more vendors every week. These action blocks that contain that already written code that we slide into place and allow you to use and build out your IT automation. Pliant really is here to help IT organizations keep up with the business and digital technologies. There's so many of these great ideas where data is being transformed to do amazing things, but all of that data has to cross an infrastructure. Pliant is in the business of automating the configuration, deployment, and upkeep of that infrastructure. Our software allows people to be 10 times more efficient than they would be if they were writing those lines of code by hand. Pliant really has an innovative solution that is out helping companies streamline, secure, and optimize the delivery of IT infrastructure automation with drag and drop blocks. For more information on Pliant, you can see us on the web at pliant.io.
Roar for Good started 6 years ago with the mission of making the world a safer place. After our start in personal safety, we pivoted to workplace safety. And we decided to start in the hospitality industry for two main reasons. One is the need is evident. 58% of housekeepers experience sexual harassment on the job. They tend to be women of color, immigrants, and not only that, but due to the daily pull and grind of their job, the daily bending, twisting, pulling, they're more susceptible to injuries than any other service worker. The second, compliance. Unions, city and state legislation, as well as hotel brands are requiring location-based panic button solutions to protect their staff. And that deadline is around the corner. December 31st, 2021, 42,000 hotels need a panic button solution or they face heavy fines. Let me introduce you to the always-on staff safety solution, which is comprised of these 5 components. How does it work? Let's take a typical use case. Let's say Rosa is cleaning a room in room 409 and something suddenly happens. What she can do is immediately press the staff alert device that she's wearing, which will be immediately picked up by the smart beacon that will relay her exact location to security on the front desk to allow help to summon to exactly where she is so she can receive the help that she needs. What makes our solution different from everyone else is we use a patent-pending Bluetooth mesh technology that knows and protects staff wherever they are. The biggest differentiation is how we've leveraged our technology to be the cost driver or the lowest cost solution in the market, which is key in a compliance-driven industry. Whereas our competitors have a 1-to-1 beacon gateway ratio, our technology, the way that it works allows us to have a 50 beacon to 1 gateway ratio, allowing us to pass the cost savings on to the hoteliers and be that market leader. Our business model has a long-term sustainable advantage as well. We have 3 revenue streams: upfront hardware, upfront install, and then a recurring SaaS fee that we collect either on a monthly or an annual basis. Our contracts are anywhere between 3 to 6 years, and we are cash flow positive before we even arrive on site because we collect 90% of the cost up front. We're also preferred vendors of over 2,100 hotels, excuse me. And what's really key here is in a compliance-driven industry, what's happening is because the demand is so high, these hotel management companies that we're a part of actually drive leads to us instead of us having to go collect them. Our reach and our impact is much more than the normal company. The business case is there for our solution by employers doing the right thing for their employers. Their employees do the right thing by them. And business case have shown time and time again, if you take care of your own employees, they take care of you. Hospitality is just the beginning for us. We are already seeing compliance start to grow in healthcare as well as K through 12 schools. And what we're going to do is follow where the compliance is. I'm running out of time. Our management team is top notch. We're all serial entrepreneurs who have been there, done that. And actually, because of our start in personal safety, where we built, designed, and manufactured our own panic button solution, we were able to use that Bluetooth expertise to have the moat that we've built today. And overall, Roar for Good is in workplace safety. We're very excited of what's ahead in front of us this year.
Hi everyone, my name is Nick Delmonico and I am the CEO and co-founder of Strados Labs. And at Strados Labs, we believe in making every breath count. I started this company because when I was 4 years old, I was diagnosed with asthma. And I struggled to recognize when I was wheezing, coughing, and having shortness of breath until it was too late. So we had a vision of creating a technology that enables clinicians and patients to better understand symptoms and avoid bad events. The key issue here is not just that patients end up in the hospital, but even for clinical trials and pharmaceutical companies developing new drugs, it's extremely expensive to get data that is necessary to provide the best outcomes possible and get new drugs to market for those with chronic respiratory diseases. It's the #1 most expensive trial to run, even more expensive than oncology trials, at nearly $35,000 per patient. So again, this is a challenge not just for the patients, but for those who are trying to develop technologies and drugs to provide the best care possible. And this problem stems from a couple of key things. One, patients are poor perceivers of symptoms, and so that subjective data increases the size of the trial and the complexity of the trials. And while we want to have centralized care and analysis, it's nearly impossible to do, especially in this day and age with COVID-19, forcing everybody to work remote and decentralize their trials. And as you may see here on screen, this is the only clinically validated tool today to measure coughing in a clinical trial, and it is not patient-friendly and real-world enabled. So that's why we created the RESP technology. It is a small, non-invasive biosensor patch with an AI platform that allows us to listen to lung health, breathing patterns, and sounds across the entire patient journey from hospital to home. We are the only FDA 510(k) cleared wireless wearable stethoscope device with a connected back-end platform. And when we think about this technology compared to the standard technology that's available today, we focus heavily on patient burden and patient privacy. It's much more discreet and it's much more user-friendly. It allows us to get data for a much longer period of time than the standard technology that is available today. And what we've done so far with this technology is validate that #1, we can identify changes in lung sounds like coughing and wheezing after treatments and during treatments, which helps, again, pharmaceutical companies understand how their drug is impacting the patient's life. And that has gotten the excitement of some of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies, who we are now working with on several phase 2 and phase 3 drug trials to help get new drugs anywhere from infectious disease to chronic respiratory disease to market faster and more efficiently. We have a product as a service model where we charge for the hardware devices, the software enterprise platform, as well as our data analytics and support for the clinical trials. It's about $3,000 per patient in each trial, which is significantly lower than the current product on market. And we can get more data points like lung sounds, wheezing, rhonchi, ralls, and respiratory patterns, which is not something that they can get today. The way we get to market is not just through direct selling. but also relationships that we have built with some of the world's largest CROs, where they can recognize that our device can be used in the trial and recommend that to the sponsor organization before we even have a relationship with the sponsor ourselves. That reduces the sales cycle and improves our ability to get into market faster. And what this technology does for pharma is something that's going to help us on our bigger mission, which is to identify worsening pulmonary events before disease progresses and patients end up in the hospital. So this is a stepping stone for us on our mission to make every breath count. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks to this year's amazing lineup of demo pit companies. Don't forget to join us live on April 22nd at 10:30 a.m., where we'll announce this year's PHORUM Demo Pit Best in Show.
Thank you to our Demo Pit sponsors, Bentley Systems and Osage Partners, and to our Demo Pit companies. Our final 3 Demo Pit companies will be featured during our next PHORUM broadcast on April 20th. We'll announce the Demo Pit Best in Show during our final PHORUM broadcast on April 22nd. We also have 2 more variations on our theme of the enterprise data journey to explore during each of those sessions. So check the conference agenda for a preview of those sessions and speakers. All episodes will launch live at 10:30 a.m. Eastern and will be available to view on demand afterwards via our PHORUM community platform. Remember to visit the PHORUM website, forumphilly.com, for information on how to access that platform. This concludes our broadcast for today. And now I invite you to join us along with some of our Demo Pit companies and sponsors in our virtual networking lounge. You can find a link to that site in the live chat or in the agenda tab of the PHORUM community platform. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you at 10:30 a.m. on April 20th for our next PHORUM session.